there are directions into depression and there are directions out of depression, pathways out of depression. And so I thought we'd explore a few of them as an overview. So one is the direction of flow. We're bottled up, we're meeting resistance, and the path is to create more flow. Now, in order to create more flow, more movement of energy, as opposed to depressed energy, we can lift off the resistance. So, for example, we've got a pipe of energy here. It's bogged down in judgment. We can lift the judgment. It's bogged down with regulation. We can lift the regulation. We can move to a location where there is less regulation. For example, my house is bogged down in Marin County, California, where I'm told that it will take roughly $100,000 of bureaucracy and up to 3 years to get a permit to build my house. And that the house has so many regulations, etc., that the cheapest legal house that I am allowed to build will cost $650,000. And so looking around the world at places I would rather live, and this is for, I guess a quarter acre of land or something. So looking around the world at places I would rather live, I came across Costa Rica and 50 acres of land and 600 feet of riverfront and beautiful rock outcroppings and magnificent coconut trees. And 50 acres costs half the price of my, 1/4 acre. But the huge difference is lack of regulation, right? By doing an off-grid solar home and reverse osmosising the river water and planting more trees, etc. Suddenly I can do all of this without regulation. Now, there is regulation in Costa Rica. I've just spoken with enough of the neighbors in this section of Costa Rica to find that nobody can be bothered to enforce all of the many laws that would make my home more tedious, more irritating, more expensive, and less of what I wanted, right? So it's depressing to spend more money and more time to get less of what you want and have someone else blocking and holding up the process. It's expressive, it's flowing in order to get more of what you want for less energy in the way that you want. And so that's kind of moving in the direction of flow. In other words, building in Marin County, as Elon Musk says, referencing Giga Texas, it's built now, but if he was in California, he'd still be waiting for the permit, right? As opposed to having a fully flowing, functional factory producing the safest electric cars on the planet. So resistance and flow. So we're looking at removing cost and resistance, making it easier. If you make something easier, it flows more. It's like water, right? You put dams, you put little obstacles in it, and it slows down. It dams up. You remove that resistance, and you have flow. Now, the other side of that is working on the other side of the pipeline, which is motivation, right? I'm not the kind of person that's all passionate about a house. I just want it to flow easily, right? I really don't care if it's the latest this or that. I want, what I care about is quiet. What I care about is being able to walk safely in a beautiful environment, right? And so, but the other side to work at is to make the goal, to make the objective more compelling, right? So that's one way to work with flow is, to kind of be motivated to overcome all of those resistances. So you have reducing friction, and you have increasing the value and thus the motivation to you. Now, this also kind of dovetails with another direction, which is to find a compelling reason, right? That ties in with flow. I don't have any reason to get out of bed today, so I feel depressed. I don't have any reason. Now, for example, taking care of a family is a good example. You get out of bed in order to take care of your children or your dog, or studies have shown that you live longer if you have a houseplant to take care of rather than living in a nursing home with no dog, no family, and no houseplant, right? You have zero, nothing is depending on you, nothing is needing you. So you have no meaning, no purpose, right? If I die, if I live, if I die, my kids will pay less money to the hospice care, and they would appreciate that. So, basically, I create a narrative where my death benefits the world and my existence has no benefit. And so you put a houseplant in there, and now the houseplant depends on you watering it. You get a dog, and the dog depends on you feeding and exercising and playing with it. You have a grandchild or a child, and the child depends on you in a variety of ways, and you live longer, right? More life flows through your body. And so you can create a meaning. You can also create a reason. So you can create more meaning or more reason in order to move through, because there will be some cost. There will be some cost in pain, some cost in money, some cost in time, some cost in natural resources to your existence. And you've got a mental calculator, an emotional calculator, a physiological calculator that is saying, is it worth it, right? This is the cost. And the cost can't go to zero. But you can bring the reason and the meaning to infinity. Meaning you can design a life and a story and a pattern and a set of meaning that is so compelling that it would be worth 3 times the effort you have to go through in order to see that happen, right? Like, imagine if you getting out of bed and pressing a button would save 1 million lives. And every day you get out of bed and press a button, you could save 1 million lives. And you might be in absolute agony and absolute despair and depression, and your skin's falling off, and you can't stand this. But you've got a meaning, you've got a purpose, you've got so much riding on you getting out of bed, etc., that your life would have meaning. If that was all you did, was save 1 million lives by getting out of bed and pressing a button, 99% of people would do that and have a sense that their life was worthwhile. And that's a clue, right? So the more things that we care about, that we can link to our life, is the path of purpose and meaning. Now, here's a good example of that in my life. I've been a landscape designer and installer for close to 30 years, 29, 30 years. And as is the case statistically, most small business owners burn out after 20 years. That's very common. And so I think these types of videos are 10 times more important, meaningful, valuable than putting in another $100,000 garden remodel. So the average job this year is over $100,000, And I'm basically taking a decent garden and making it a lot better. Few gardens around here are being done from scratch, so a garden that's already nicer than 90% of the planet, and then making it better. And most of my clients are emotionally illiterate to a large extent if we had a high standard. I mean, it all depends on your standard. You can say, I know what a feeling is. What is it? Well, it's a feeling. It's sad or angry. So I'm not illiterate. I know what a feeling is. Well, do you know how to construct hate? Do you know how to predict hate? Do you know how to dissolve hate? Do you know how to increase emotional flow by 10% reliably for you? I mean, if you have some standards about what it means to be psychologically literate or emotionally literate, well, then, almost nobody knows anything in our cult, in our culture, because we don't teach anything. And what we do teach is typically shame-based and non-scientific based. In other words, what most of us learn about feelings in our culture is worse than learning nothing at all. And so you could say that, as a result of the cultural protocol, many of us are less happy than we would be if we learn nothing about feelings. So we're a net negative culture when it comes to emotional literacy. And so it makes a lot more sense to me if, rather than hiring me as a landscaper, that we commission $100,000 a piece to becoming vastly more psychologically literate as a culture. I mean, that seems intelligent. Because if you're emotionally illiterate, you're not going to get $100,000 of enjoyment. For all that $100,000, the client looks out and says, oh, that's so nice. And then they go back to being depressed and worrying about this and fighting and being jealous and doing all these things that take up most of their energy, right? So most of the time I think, what a nutty culture, hiring me again to do a garden, and nobody's interested in emotional literacy, right? Like, if I try and talk with a client about this, they quickly kind of, it's like, okay, that's a lot of stuff I'm not sure what to do with. Now let me go watch TV, right? Which generally at the present time is a depressive, right? Most people watching the news, which is really adrenaline addiction in the current case, are not going to do anything with that. They're going to come away depressed, right? So it's not a lot of intelligence there. It's nuts, right? So I can't get excited about that. Oh, wonderful. Another American is going to take something that's perfectly fine, disrupt their life, and pay me lots of money to make it 3 times nicer. We're going to use a lot of environmental resources to do all this, driving around with trucks and all this stuff. And it's not going to make a big difference in their life. And it's the same old story. Focus on appearance and the outside rather than working on the inner work, right? It's rather boring at this point. So I'm not excited about my mission to, create 3 times better gardens for rich people who already have very nice gardens. But that's what the culture wants to pay me a lot of money for. So what to do, right? Because people do not want to pay a lot of money for this, which is sad because an informed person would. Right? A truly intelligent person would put this kind of learning, healing depression, ahead of a garden. But I live in a culture where I have so much work that I turn half of it away, and I make lots of money doing something that is not going to, 20% of my clients are depressed. And it's, one person holding them and giving them a massage would have more impact than a $100,000 garden. But in an emotionally and psychologically illiterate culture, they don't know that, and they don't know that they don't know that. And they would even find it weird because it would diverge from the norm to do that. I mean, most of my clients that are quite happily, 2 jobs ago, $250,000 to make a perfectly nice garden nicer. And yet they would think it was extravagant to spend $50,000 inviting a healing person to live with them year round and talk with them and explore psychological elements and look at their diet and bring a nice energy into the house. They would say, oh, that's extravagant. How is it extravagant to increase the happiness of your family 50%, to give someone a home and to promote this? So anyway, this kind of stuff drives me nuts. And so, but I can't change the culture that I'm in, right? I've attempted to, at different times, hosting groups and various things, and people get a tremendous amount of value subjectively, physiologically, emotionally. But in a chauvinistic culture where all of that is no big deal, and it's a really big deal to get a new car, and it's a really big deal to buy a bigger house or whatever it is, like that's the cultural narrative. I could not, or let's just say, I don't know how to make a living doing this kind of thing, right? There's a lot of people that don't even want to listen to this for free, right? Oh, so tedious. Let's go watch a sports game or have let's get a pick-me-up, drink a Pepsi, right? So that's just the culture I'm in. It's not energizing, it's depressing because it doesn't seem to be following the data. I would much rather hire someone for $50,000 a year to, be a in-house chef and talk about this and process feelings and help brainstorm and give massages. And I mean, what a luxury. And so anyway, this ties in with creating a reason. Right? There are many, many people who do not believe in the job that their cult wants to pay them for, and do believe in jobs that their cult doesn't want to pay them for, right? So how do you create more flow, more meaning, more reason in this type of situation? Well, for me, so you have to link these two together. So, for example, some do it with their family. I have no interest in this job. It drains me every day. But putting my kids, helping them, learn useful things and taking care of them and watching them grow up, that's my meaning. That's my reason. So if that reason is strong enough, the water, the energy will flow over the most inane, convoluted obstacles in order to get there. So this is working on the other side of the pipe, right? To pull energy through because it's so important, right? You got to go it, right? Now, again, some people manage to do this in things like the Olympics. Like getting a gold medal is so important. That's another area I completely disagree. I don't get how spending 6 years of your life and hundreds of thousands of dollars to shave half a second off the world record and hurting your body and not having a romantic relationship and not enjoying going out to dinner because you're wanting to shave half a second off the world record. I don't think that's very intelligent. But if that's the best you can do in a cult that says that being number one is so important. See, being number one is not so important. It's often more miserable to be number one than to be number 20. Like if you could have a girlfriend and eat nice food and go for walks and listen to books on tape rather than train 12 hours a day to be number one, you're more intelligent to be number 20. Meaning you're happier and you're spending less energy to be happy. That's intelligence. But in a cult that says that your value is determined by your rank in the most ridiculous things, pole vaulting, you can jump on a pole higher. I mean, what does that have to do with happiness? I mean, sure, if you happen to become ecstatic with pole vaulting, but many people, it's let's look what you can do. Oh, you can jump on a pole. You can hit a ball back. I mean, is anyone thinking this through? What about you could give massages to the neighbors 30% more efficiently? If you're going to devote yourself to selfless pole vaulting. How about massaging the neighborhood and or offering free orgasms, right? I will massage your penis or your clitoris for free, right? And I will get you to orgasm half a second faster than the world record, right? I mean, that's an intelligent thing versus jumping on a pole, I mean, it's a different pole. I mean, this is nuts. And I don't get it. Like, how did you manage to convince this dedicated, seemingly smart person to devote 10 years of their life to first putting up a line? And you're putting it there. It's not like you're escaping a fire. So you put up this line, and then you attempt to go over it. And if you succeed, you raise the line up. And then you attempt to go over that. 8 hours a day. No, I can't. I'd love to have a drink, but I can't. I'd love to talk with you about your important feelings, but I've got training to do for this really, really, really important thing. Well, what? Well, I take this long pole, and I run, and I put the pole in the ground, and then I try and jump over this string that I stuck up. And so I'm sure you have feelings. I'm sure you'd like me to be making more money. I'm sure you'd have this, but, you got to understand, I've got a mission in life to jump over this piece of string. It's like, it's, if people would only have missions to understand the loneliness in their neighborhood or know who's depressed and why and do something about it 20% faster than the next neighborhood. I mean, now that's a competition worth having. It just, when you're a cult member, the first thing cults have to do is get you not to think and question the cult, because the whole thing falls apart in a heartbeat if you start thinking. You're doing what? For what reason? Because that's what they've always done before? I mean, I guarantee you that if you got 1,000 children and isolated them from the global cults, and you just sat them down day after day and said, let's focus on the most important paths to happiness, I guarantee you that not one of the 1,000 people would say, you know what? Out of everything I could be doing in life to bring about happiness, I think I'm going to spend 8 hours a day running into a pole and jumping over a piece of string. Where do you invent these things, right? As this thing to be, I'm so depressed. I'm so depressed. Someone else jumped an extra inch higher over the string. My life is ruined. I mean, and we this is where something like manage your story. Maybe your story could shift a little to, I'm not aiming. My story is that my purpose in life is not to jump higher than anyone else over a piece of string. My story is I'm going to become more emotionally literate than anyone else in my neighborhood, which is not hard at all. I mean, that's a very low bar. Maybe as more literate than anyone else in the state or the county. I mean, that's probably not all that hard either. But, at least on the other side, there's a deliverable that has something to do with well-being in your community and is meaningful. And so, what I've done is realizing that I'm in a cult that wants to pay me $1 million a year to take perfectly nice gardens and make them much nicer. In a cult where most people are not going to notice the garden because they'll be so much focused on their phone, that I can take money and give it to far more intelligent things. And so this is the area that I recognize that people want to pay me a lot of money. And I can turn the money into more well-being that does make me happy. So right now I've sent, for example, $10,000 with my wife to a very poor area of the Philippines. And that $10,000 will bring more well-being to, 10 to 20 of those 30 than, anything else this year. And that's exciting. How to make each of those dollars go further, right? So that's one thing that's very, very, very interesting. Taking 2 children out of an abusive family and getting them a mentor. That's really interesting. Taking 2 traumatized children and buying them a dog, knowing that a dog is going to increase their quality of life significantly. That's exciting, right? I can't wait to see which dog they pick and how relating to that. I'm so excited about that. I mean, that is by far the most interesting thing in my life is, watching how those kids like their dog. So in other words, what I'm doing is linking relatively meaningless stuff, meaning it's not very high on the continuum. It's probably, I could think of 19 better things to be doing with my time than taking nice gardens, tearing them up, and making them nicer, right? I could think of better things for the environment. I could think of better things to make those clients happy. I could think of better things for the culture in general. I could think of better things for myself, easily, 20 better things than that, right? Before we would get to that. But you see, I can't change the culture. I point this out. It's one of the first things in my book. Don't hire me. Go on a vacation if your family is struggling. That came out of watching one client literally say, my husband's going to hate this. This is a very stressful time for us. So it's going to be hard for us to have you tear up our whole landscape and put in something nicer and spend all this money. And I'm like, what are you doing? You've just said it's bad for your marriage, it's bad for your health, it's bad for your stress, you're not going to enjoy it. So you're going to pay me hundreds of thousands of dollars for that? Did you just pay attention to anything? Don't hire me. Go to Hawaii with your husband and make him happy. How about that? It's too much of a stretch. Right? So that's the first chapter in my book on landscaping is don't hire me if this is going to stress you out. And so that's creating a reason. So as I was getting more depressed, that people keep wanting to hire me for stuff that I don't think is very important and don't want to hire me for stuff that is important, I say things like, okay, well, with all that money I'm making landscaping, I can do these things for free. I can write books for free. I can send, money to do really useful things. And so I now feel excited about my work, not for the work, but for all of the things that I'm doing with it. So I've healed that depression. Now I'm excited to get a job. It's like I was to the point where it's like, why are you calling me? It irritates me that you're hiring me, basically. Well, that's one way would be to pivot to another thing. But as I say, in a chauvinistic culture, I have found plenty of people who have recognized that I'm good in these areas. I've had people say, you understand me more in an hour than anyone in my whole life. I've had people say that to me. But not one of them, recognizing that talent, has said they want to pay me hundreds of thousands of dollars to be seen and understood or create the best relationships of their life. I mean, that would be intelligent, given that those would actually bring them more happiness than a garden. But it just never occurs to an American to want to do that. And so giving a reason for for doing that. So, I do art projects with my own money that nobody would pay me to do, that I'm 10 times more excited about than what people will pay me to do. And I do various things like that. So I actually work now, I volunteer to work more time every day in my nonprofit for free than I do making money. And so in that dynamic, because it's linked, I'm really, really, really excited about landscaping for generating $150,000 a year to my nonprofits and funding the lifestyle that lets me volunteer, 3 or 4 hours a day doing really important stuff that ties into people's well-being. And so that's, that's the path, right? To take the stuff that you're depressed about and doesn't have any meaning, and give it meaning by linking it to something that actually has meaning. I hate my boss. I don't like my co-workers. I think my company is corrupt. I don't enjoy my government. But I'm spending 10 hours a day driving to work, preparing for work, doing all this. That's a depressing situation. But if you could take all that and say, okay, but I'm gonna create $10 a week or $100 a week or $1,000 a week, and I'm gonna link that to something I absolutely care about. Maybe it's becoming financially independent and traveling the world, being able to give gifts to kind people, right? There's so much unrecognized kindness. What about traveling the world? And anytime you see an unrecognized kindness, giving them an award and $500 to help someone and recording it. So here's this really kind person, one of the kindest people in the world award. Thank you for expressing your kindness. And here's $500. What are you going to do with this $500 to bring happiness to other people? And then filming that. I mean, that's intelligent, because it's way more fun to watch that than it is to watch sports. And it sees good things getting done, and it helps you form relationships with kind people, which is, 10 times more important than having another car or a jet, right? Actually have relationships with kind. You have to be intelligent to actually understand that capital is not the most valuable thing in the world, right? Bits of paper is bits of paper, right? Digits are digits. But kindness and happiness, wow. So that's an exciting meaning. So I'm going to do this fucked up job for 5 years, and then I'm going to travel the world for a whole year, seeing this and this, right? And giving away, finding the kindest person I can find every week, and then the kindest of the week award, right? And do that. So you can link it to something that you actually care about. And, you know, that's, if I could find passionate filmmakers, that's one of the things I would do. I found that I hate dealing with editing film. So that kind of nixes that for me, right? And my wife, every time I give her the camera, I'm, you know, it's like, what? Why is it on my feet? You know, what's this, right? And so I, you know, and I don't want to travel with somebody that I don't like. And so basically nothing gets filmed traveling because I like my wife. She just has zero interest in learning to hold a camera or remembering to press record. So, you know, I've kind of given up on that with some bitterness that, you know, 10% of effort would have brought about all of this stuff, right? A little bit of effort, right? But, you know, nothing is perfect, right? So I do find that kind of thing irritating, but since we just got into fights about that, I just, well, we have to let that go, right? But if I could find intelligent filmmakers that were interested in film and learning about cameras and wanted free film equipment to play around and wanted to travel and liked, you know, making people happy and wanted to help people, well, it would be so much fun, right, to travel with them, helping them do their dream, doing this dream, and, you know, giving kindness a boost in the world. So there are many things, you know, like that, which, like if you correlate it, I'm going to save $100 a week or whatever it is, and I'm going to just do this and do this and do this, and then I'm going to do this, and that's where the meaning comes. So that's all in the domain of flow through purpose and meaning. And of course, if you can stop doing something, that isn't all that important to you in order to do something more, that's even better, right? I'm not intelligent enough to do that, or I would have done it, right? Meaning I've everything that I've tried has worked out as an equation that it's better for me to, at times I've only worked 3 months a year as a landscaper, paid for all the bills, then donated time and money, and then done other things for 9 months of the year, right? And so that's still a better option. Right now I'm maxing out because I want to put as much money as possible into nonprofits before I retire, that then I can spend in my retirement, right? So that's, you know, how to create the most amount of happiness for the most amount of people per dollar, per hour. That's an exciting equation, right? And so that's the nonprofit that I formed to give a reason. And so I've created that reason. I've now got 3 nonprofits, and they each have interesting reasons that are exciting. And so now the landscaping is very exciting because it's funding that. And so that's kind of a path, one, you know, 2 of the paths, meaning and purpose. Reducing resistance or increasing the motivation. And so what are some of the other paths? We've got paths of affirmation and meditation, visualization, right? Because 2/3 of your reality is your heart and your mind. So if you create time each day to have an ideal heart and mind in visualization, whatever it is that is ideal for you, if you visualize and live in that reality and feel what that feels like in your mind, and then at the end of that you ask, is there any small thing that I could take from that back to this world, right? To the physical reality, right? So I've been in my blissful mental, emotional reality, you know, imagining an intelligent America that hired people based on how much happiness they brought to others, where that was scientifically measured. Oh, what a beautiful world to be in. Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, my goodness. And then, okay, so I've done my 30 minutes of blissful visualization. And now, is there any part of that? Is there any part of that that I could take some action on? Maybe I'll make a video about that, or maybe I'll put a chapter in a book about that, or maybe I will make a plan for that, or maybe I'll travel the world and see if there's a place that rewards that. Maybe Bhutan, that's measuring national happiness. Maybe Bhutan would be receptive to something like this, and maybe they need, so take a little step, right? So that there's more hope, more probability of something like that happening. And so we've got that path. Help someone else to feel really happy and enthusiastic, I would say, is a good path. And one of the best ways to do that would be creating conscious peak experience, sitting down with people and saying, let's create a really great peak experience for both of us. And, that's being around other people who are so excited, helping my wife's siblings grow and become more and become happier. She has some younger siblings. I've never seen my wife so happy about anything. And so I haven't even met these kids, but I mean, it's really nice to be around someone who's really, really happy about helping other people, right? And so anyway, that's, she's off doing that right now in the Philippines, and I get regular updates on this and this and this, and so that's, that's exciting. Right? It's more exciting in many ways than what I'm doing, right? But I have vicarious, I can imagine that, and I can imagine that, and I smile, right? And so less depression, more happiness. We talked about the path of power, getting more good at something useful. Cooking is really useful. You become an exceptional cook, where you can just go into any fridge with miscellaneous ingredients and come up with something much nicer than anyone else in the house would cook. And you offer that to people. I mean, that's a real useful thing to get good at. Good at massage, right? Who'd like a massage, right? And I can make you feel 50 to 150% better in any setting and anything. And I get oxytocin. You lean back into my chest and do a little massage, and it disrupts the group energy because you've just violated the cult. The cult, you're supposed to be discussing politics and getting upset and making little cute quips and remarks and tittering and drinking alcohol. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And here you are doing something different, right? And so when you break into when you break the cult norms intelligently and bring about well-being, it just rattles things a little bit, and people think, well, maybe there is a better way of doing things, and so all that's a good thing, right? So the path of power, the path of competence, which is also the path of freedom. When you've got power, you have freedom. If you have no power, you have no freedom, and you have no self-reliance. And so when you have power and freedom and self-reliance, you can start tuning into who you really are and what is it that's unique about you that you want to bring out, that other people may try to suppress or stop or not value. But if you've got power and you've got freedom, it doesn't matter. Oh, you don't like it? Fine. I have the money to fund this myself. I have the time and skill. I know how to do that myself. I'll do it myself. You think it's a bad idea? Thank you. I'm doing it anyway, right? Because this really speaks to me. I think it's a great idea, right? And so the path of power and freedom is always, I think, it always reduces depression. More power, more freedom that you want. You know, you have the power and freedom to boss around 1,000 employees under you, but you hate being a boss. That's not power and freedom, right? You've got the ability, everyone has to do what you tell them to do. But I don't like this job, and I don't like telling them anything, right? So that's not freedom. I mean, power and freedom to do what you want. I mean, I want to be singing. I want to create great art. I want to create an art car and drive around the city talking with people who love art cars who come up to me and then give them a free ride. That's what I want, the power and freedom to do what I want to do, right? That's power and freedom, not a single employee, right? The power and freedom to do what you want to do, right? And so the path of power and freedom, the path of possibility is another path out of depression. And here's what I mean about that. You may remember the 2008 U.S. housing crisis. Basically, the housing market went way down, and nobody wanted to invest any money in their house because their house was getting less valuable every month, and many people were losing their house and all kinds of things. So there were a lot of landscapers that didn't have any work. And it's understandable, meaning if suddenly you have 100% of the landscapers and only 50% of the business. So there used to be 100% of the business and 100% of landscapers. Now there's only 50% business or 20% business, and there's still 100% of the landscapers competing for only 20% of what they had the year before, right? So obviously there's going to be 80% of landscapers that have a lot less work, right? But my question in the possibility was, well, is it possible that one landscaper out of 100,000 landscapers in the U.S., that one of them would have more work in the recession than they did before? Is it possible that one landscaper would go up in the recession? And I said, it's not only possible, I'm certain, I am sure. There's probably some billionaire somewhere who's just hired a landscaper that they didn't hire last year and told this landscaper, I want all of your time and all of your crew to do this. Because, you know, when someone has $10 billion and now they have $5 billion, they can still afford landscaping, right? So, you know, that's just the way it is, right? So I'm certain that there are a very, very tiny number of landscapers who have more work than they had before the recession, even though 80% of landscapers have their work cut in half. I'm sure there's a few that have. So then I thought, well, what do I have to do to be part of that one or two landscapers, you know, in the country whose business is going to grow in the recession? Is it possible? Yes. So then what could I imagine doing that would do that, right? And I thought, you know what? I don't know any book about my county. What if I wrote the only landscape book in my county and helped people save money, how to save money here, did this and this, that, and the other. And then I taught at my local college using the book as a textbook. And then I shared the book in libraries, and I put the book in libraries, I put the book in bookstores, I taught at the college, and I put it out to the newspapers, and I helped them write articles about the only books, the only landscape books in Marin County, successfully landscaping your Marin home. I thought, is it possible that writing that book would grow my business in the recession? I said, it is possible. I don't know if it will. I've never done it before, but it is possible. And I've got time on my hands, right? Because right now I'm part of the 80% whose work has plummeted. I've got time on my hands. So I set to work and wrote the book in 2 months, did all those things, and my business went up over the year before. That book brought in an extra $100,000 a year, which at the time was a huge increase for me. And I thought, wow, possibilities, exploring possibilities and acting on them. Well, I mean, obviously I was less depressed, because it's depressing to say all my bills have stayed the same amount. I don't have anything to do. I want to work to pay my bills, and there's no work. And there's nothing I can do about the housing market. Oh, right? Depressing. But even though I didn't change the housing market, and even though I didn't create work for the industry, meaning I didn't put everyone in landscaping back to work with this book, but I put me back to work, right? So that's moving in the path of power, but we're also looking at it from the angle of possibility, right? So these are some of the paths that, you know, I'm using examples so that they're not abstract for you. And the quantities will be different for you, and what you care about will be different for you, and the possibilities that would work for you that wouldn't work for me or will be different. And how depressed you are will be different. And your temperament will be different. But these paths have the possibility of working for everyone to some degree. They have the possibility, even the probability. And if you put energy and effort intelligently into one of these paths, your life will get better. And that's what this is all about.